Hi again, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. I am Dan Scott. Good to have you with us. You know the guy who is sitting to my right, I guess your left as you're looking at it on the screen, Jason Donnelly, the athletics director here, our regular get-together session and see what's going on in the world of administration. How are you?
I'm doing good, Dan. How are you?
I am well.
Good.
I am well. It's getting ready to be a little busy time in the broadcasting world. But
we were just talking about that, and I think that most fans might not appreciate, how hard crossover season is for you. And you think about this upcoming weekend. So we got football obviously home on Saturday, but we got a basketball game in Nashville on Friday night.
Yes.
So, and then that schedule tends to keep up. I mean, you think about Friday night away, Saturday home for football, you got Monday right back at it. But then we get into a stretch where there's away football games, there's away basketball games, there's a lot coming up next couple weeks, which is exciting for our fans, but we'll keep you very busy for the next couple weeks.
And then keep the sports information staff very busy
as
well. A lot of people are going to be logging a lot of hours and a lot of miles, but it's what we signed up for.
Yeah, and we love
right?
it. Yeah, it's part of what it is, but we love doing it.
I can tell you this, I'd much rather have my job than yours.
I'll second that.
I know we got a lot to get to. We've got some good fan questions, but just kind of some general big picture stuff going on here at Furman. I know one of the things you wanted to talk about, because it's kind of on the forefront of our fans' mind right now, is the football program.
Yeah, no, we obviously I think football for everyone right now is definitely top of mind, and I think it's been a challenging season is probably the best way to see it, and or say it when we talk about what we've experienced this past year. And I would just encourage our fan base to just stay patient with the process that we're going through, which I would consider a bit of a rebuilding year. Clay and the football staff and the team have done such a tremendous job over the last 3 years building into this championship program. And then I think all of us knew we were going to hit the reset button with the roster, but this is a little bit more extreme when you talk about the number of new players plus the number of injuries. And I look at it thinking about just the picture of the captains that we had at the start of the year, and to go through a process where, on a planning standpoint, and this is going back even before Bryce passed away, the impact of Bryce that he was going to have on this program as a leader, losing Josh Harris during the season, losing Luke to injury. I mean, even from a leadership standpoint, we're just not where we want to be. And I know it's frustrating as fans as you're going through that process. I can promise you it's equally frustrating for the coaches and the players. But I have great strength of faith in Clay and his ability to build a team and what they're doing, and watching them go through this process in terms of where they're going to get to. And this is a little bit of a rebuilding year. It's been interesting as I've talked to people in the business that don't have the association with Furman that we have. They'll ask the question, so what's going on? And, can't they just transfer portal it up and just replace those guys? And I said, well, that's just not Furman. We're going to go through a process where we're going to have 4-year athletes, and our coach is going to find the right transfers when he can, the right opportunities for Furman. But when you reset a roster, and you got to rebuild as a part of that process. It's also been interesting to me, the 2 home games that we had with Chattanooga and Western Carolina, and you could feel it. You could feel these teams that we've beaten and take away opportunities that they've had in recent years, and the sort of vengeance of them getting back to Furman. And I think an image that sticks out in my mind is after the Western Carolina game, their seniors went down on the field and took a picture together. And I think that was a statement saying, hey, we have not been able to get over this hump of Furman football during their time, but they're getting that win, and you could feel it even in the way that they ran up to score that game. But we're going through it. The team's going through it. They continue to work incredibly hard. I talked to another AD, said, I'm worried that they're going through a tough year, that their team's starting to quit on them. And I don't see any standpoint of quit in our program. If anything, I look at it, we're on the road with the ball in our hands, and we had a miscue and took us out of position to score at the end of the game, in a game we could have and should have won, but we just didn't get it done. And I think we got to build and be positive where we go. And one of the best outcomes we can see from this team is the opportunity they have in front of them this upcoming Saturday against Wofford, to play against a traditional rival and to hopefully put their best game out on the field and get a really good win against a team that gave us a tough loss last year. So excited about it. Everyone's disappointed in terms of overall where you'd want it to be, but I believe in these coaches. I believe in these team and what they build and what they're going, and we'll get back to it.
Yeah, I one of the things I love about Clay particularly and his staff is that they won't make excuses. And we talk about it because we tell the story and the full story includes the fact that there are 13 players out for the year. If you go all the way back to spring practice and then at the beginning of fall camp when both of the starting safeties went down, haven't played a snap. And at the same time, he says in his press conference this week, he said, I'm not talking about us being young anymore. We've played too much football. But when you have true freshmen and redshirt freshmen who were 3, 4, or maybe even 5 on the depth chart at the season's beginning, now at 1 and 2 because of injuries. The downside is what we're seeing now. The upside is the experience that they're getting and what that's going to mean for next year and the year after.
Yeah, and one of the things I really appreciate about Clay, he's not going to make excuses.
No.
He's not going to say, "Yeah, this is the issue or that's the issue." No one's making excuses. We're not getting the job done on the field in the games in terms of execution, all those things that come into it, and regardless of who's on the field or not on the field, he's not going to make that excuse for him. What he's focused on is practices. The practice has been good. The development's been good. The commitment's been good. The culture's been good. But the result on the field has not been what we've wanted it. And, hopefully, again, you can always – the thing about football is that you live in agony or you live in bliss, one week to the next, depending on your result. And this is an opportunity for them in this week ahead to get a really great win against a team that disappointed us last year when we played Wofford. That was a tough loss last year, but it's a chance for them to get out there and get a great win. And then to go on a road against two really good teams at ETSU and at Mercer and to hopefully have an upswing to the season in terms of where we are. But, again, I love Clay, and I love Clay for more reasons than just the success that he puts on the field. I would just tell you from a standpoint of character in terms of representing Furman, all the little things that he does, he's a special person, and we're really lucky to have him. And just continue to ask everyone's patience and support and come out to the game on Saturday and let's cheer these guys on to a win.
Yeah, and I'd point out Saturday is senior day.
Yes.
And there's a lot of young men, although not as many as last year when we walked 41. They were lined up from one end zone to the next. I think the number's right around 15.
Yes.
And these young men have poured a lot of their heart and soul into the program, and it'll be another opportunity to remember Bryce Stanfield on what would have been his senior day as well.
And not just the guys that are on the field, Bryce and what this means to his family and the wonderful work that you've done with them and how Terry and Fred have been connected to this program. But let's also remember we're also celebrating the community at Furman, all those that support the program and their support roles, the band, the cheer, the dance. Everyone that's a part of this. This is a big Saturday for Furman, and we want to celebrate that accordingly. And then also beat the Terriers. That would make it a great one.
Yeah, that's always right at the top, right?
We would love that.
Beat Wofford. The one consolation they can take out of this season is one of the goals they have on the board downstairs is win the state championship, and that's beat the two teams in the league that are in the state of South Carolina, already taking care of the Citadel, and you got a chance to salvage a little bit with a win over Wofford.
And I think the ultimate goal of winning a national championship has not changed, and that's the work that this staff and this team's got to work towards. And you look at where we were last year, we were knocking on the door of that opportunity. We almost had an opportunity to host the semifinal game right here in Paladin Stadium. So that's still fresh in all of our minds in terms of where we want the program to be. And I trust in Clay and what he's doing, and we'll get back to that point. In better news, we want to celebrate these cross-country championships. We had a phenomenal Saturday on the golf course where we had a chance to host this event. Both the men and the women won for the 12th straight time. We had incredible support. A ton of track alumni from the 60s and 70s came back with Coach Kiesling. They had a wonderful dinner the night before. We had all the teams that were here on campus come out to support. Just a tremendous event, personal records for the team and course records that were accomplished, and now we'll go to the NCAA championships Friday the 15th up in Rock Hill, South Carolina, which will be great. Men's and women's soccer both had really good seasons. Was proud of both of them for the way they competed and have battled through adversity. Women's soccer has had a number of injuries throughout the year, and they went right down to the wire. Their game against Samford in the semifinals, and it could have gone either way. And Samford scored a goal with 2 minutes left, and they'll move on and have a championship with Western Carolina. Men's soccer's got a huge playoff game against Mercer coming up this upcoming Friday up in Greensboro. And again, if they're one goal away from winning a championship. So one goal goes in, and they're champions, and they're right there. And Doug Allison's done a great job with the program. Volleyball is coming off of 2 great wins this past weekend. They're going to host the next 5 games at home, which is a great opportunity then for them to finish the season strong. Again, another program that's gone through some really debilitating injuries with their upperclassmen, but they're in the fight and competing for a championship as well. Very proud of golf. Golf finished second in the Furman Invitational. Had a great performance right here on our course. second to Texas A&M, but ahead of Wake Forest and ahead of Richmond, ahead of Davidson. So Matt Davidson's done a great job with his team. Jeff Hull's been rebuilding his team as well. They've had a successful fall. And both tennis programs had a great fall as well. So just a lot of optimism around all the teams in spite of a lack of success with football. And I think that's a part of what a season is in terms of what you do. And then last night, Dan, we opened up the season with a men's basketball and a women's basketball win. And we're really excited about that. And looking forward to getting on the road at Belmont this weekend. Looking forward to hosting Jacksonville with men's basketball next Monday. Women's basketball opens up this Thursday. So a lot of great stuff happening with the Paladins.
You know, I asked Bob Ritchie this on the pregame show yesterday. I'll ask you from your standpoint. When the doors of Timmons were shut and the construction began, that's when the logistical planning for what the season was going to be like for both the men and the women took place. What we're seeing now is not something that's happenstance or they're making it up as they go along. This has been planned for months, really.
Yeah, it's actually been planned for years. And I know that sounds like an oddity, but the whole process of going through this construction, we had that question, even someone on campus said, well, when did the Timmons Arena renovation begin? I said, for me, it began the day I got hired. You know, this was something that we needed to do, that we wanted to work on, that we needed to do to upgrade the program and to get consistent with the peers. Like one of the things that we've shared with campus is that, you know, Elon, Belmont, College of Charleston, Wofford, High Point, you know, schools in our region, size and scale with basketball, they've all gone through these renovations as well. We're not the only ones in this space. And we needed to go through this process to update just to be competitive in our own conference, but nevertheless on a national level. But these plans to play at the Well, this was a relationship that was built years ago, really trying to think about what was the best situation for both our men's program and women's program, both for games and for practices. The men playing downtown is a natural fit. And we also go into it knowing, hey, when we play Auburn, we're going to draw a good crowd. When we play Columbia International, we might not. You know, how do we go through it? How do we mobilize our students? What are the games we need to push for? What are the games we need to take a step back in terms of how we push with getting everyone mobilized down there? We're very excited, you know, looking ahead to a Tulane game on a Friday night, you know, a Princeton game on a Saturday. You know, Wofford and doubleheaders that we have in the Saturdays coming up. But we're also realistic about the draw in terms of getting people down there every game. So the fan support really matters. I thought it was a good atmosphere yesterday. I was happy and pleased with where it is. Relative to what we can do for a game of that magnitude. We've also made decisions around TV. We've gone through a process that one of the biggest concerns that we have as a department, and not just at Furman. This is at every SoCon school that's going through this. This is at every NCAA school, regardless of size and scale. Everyone's had to do a hard evaluation on what your ROI is on what you do and where your point of investment is. For example, radio. Radio is very important. It's really good to have feedback in that process of the work that you have done, the work that we've done with our partners in Greenville, that we're seeing great metrics and great energy around radio. It really matters to our corporate partners. It matters to our fans. I've gotten superstitious with radio. When football away games, if we're playing well, I stay with you on the radio. I can't watch the TV because I'm getting more out of it. And then I worry when we twist and turn. But I feel like we have a competitive advantage when I listen to you on the air than I am if I'm watching the game on TV, which is a weird superstition, but I feel like it works. But as we go through this process, we've had to look at all these things. Like an example of that is we're not going to televise non-Division I games for the men and the women, just like we're changing our TV production schedule on other things. And the way we've looked at it is, do we want to deliver quality when we do it, or do we want to deliver quantity? And the decision we've made is that we're going to go with quality. We're going to do a great job with what we do and when we do it. But we just can't do everything in terms of what that process is. And what that is that for a non-Division I game, we need our fans to come down to the arena. We need to listen in on the radio as a point of focus. And then we need to do a great job in the TV production that we do. But we're having to make hard decisions within Furman. We're having to make hard decisions within the SoCon. We're having to make hard decisions within the NCAA relative to resources. You know, it's changing, and it's changing very quickly. And we're not the only ones that are feeling this. They're feeling these changes at Clemson. They're feeling these changes at South Carolina. They're feeling these changes at Villanova. They're feeling these changes at James Madison. They're feeling these changes at Wofford and at Samford. So we're all going through this right now, and it's a little bit of a change of the model, not just in athletics but also in higher ed. There's just a lot of dynamics at play right now. in terms of what we're doing. But the Timmons project, the one thing is really exciting for me, and we're going to get to the point of starting to host tours on a regular basis for our fans, is every time I get in there, I'm overly encouraged about the process we've gone through to build this arena, what the impact's going to be on men's basketball, what the impact's going to be on women's basketball, what the impact's going to be on Furman, our community. It's awesome. So every time I get in there, it's better than we expected. And I thought Bob Ritchie's agent said it best. He said, this is not a renovation. This is a brand new building. This is a totally new thing for Furman. It's not just changing some things around and moving some things around. It's a brand new space. So we're encouraged. We're excited. And, yes, it was a lot of work to set up the arrangement at the Well, to set up the arrangement at North Greenville. And we're going to have a couple games at, Bob Jones. We're going to play a game at Legacy. Like we've had to figure out some things along the way, but I feel really good about how the team's executed the plan.
It brings to mind the old baseball movie, the Bingo Long Traveling Road Show. I mean, you're just going out on the road and doing what you have to do to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a cool thing. I mean, it's a not to say once in a lifetime process, but for an athletic department, it's a once in a 30-year period of time where you go through this.
Mm-hmm.
And what we want to do is support the team at the highest possible level, give them the best position to be successful. And Bob is committed to playing a competitive schedule. Like we've got a very competitive schedule to prepare us to be the best team we can be in the Southern Conference. And getting behind this team and supporting them through ups and downs is going to be a part of that process. And he's very excited about the team he has. Called Pierre last night. He's driving home from his game and how fired up he was. And he won a game on the road yesterday with two starters out, and then he's trying to figure out how to get these starters back, if it's Thursday or they're going to Georgia on Sunday. And, I said, Pierre, I don't know if it's going to change your outcome on Sunday when you play Georgia, whether you have them or not. But just going through that process for either of these teams. But we're in a really, really good spot at Furman, and we're trying to figure these things out in the greater context of higher ed, NCAA, legislation changes, and trying to help us position the best place we can be moving forward. But we got great coaches, great people, great staff. We got a really good thing going here at Furman.
Well, and that kind of leads into, I know, the other major topic you wanted to get to before we get to the fan questions, and that is the big picture with everything still going on in the NCAA.
Yeah, and the NCAA topics, and you can read about these, and they're becoming more and more clear with each day, but there's still a lot of uncertainty around what these things are. I think the House settlement is moving forward in the sense that we understand we're going to lose revenue. That revenue will be redistributed to student athletes that were impacted by it. There's different levels of it. People say, is it fair? Is it unfair? At the end of the day, it's what it is. If you're going to be a part of Division I, you need to choose to be a part of that settlement. The second part of it is the whole conversation around roster caps, around scholarship management, around resources, around teams. This is still a debate. We at Furman, we really value, the ability to bring in as many students as possible to be part of these teams. We don't know if roster caps will be the right fit for Furman or some of the private schools in the Southern Conference. And at the same time, we want to prepare our teams and position them for the best advantage that they can have. So that's an ongoing conversation that's taking place at the conference level with the CEOs, with the ADs, with the commissioner. It's been a positive conversation and productive in that space. Then the third part of it is revenue generation, which, again, we're open to that. And we've been existing with NIL, and we have collectives, and we have different things taking place to support what we're doing. But just looking at the model of where we're going, while also understanding that our budget is different. The Power 4 schools just approved, I think it's like a $21 million budget to reallocate resources back into their student athletes. We're not going to have that resource bucket. We're not going to have the ability to do that at a Furman. So our model is going to look differently. But those Power 4 schools are having to figure out what they're going to fund and what they're not going to fund. And everybody knows they're going to fund football at the highest possible level that they can. You see a Gonzaga moving into that league. In the Pac-12, they're doing that so they can have the best possible resources to reinvest back into basketball. You're just going to see a lot of different things are going to take place along this process. Some of the things are going to play out earlier than others, and some of them won't. There's a group that's contesting roster caps because they're recognizing that 3,000 student athletes are going to lose spots on Division I teams. What does that mean, and how does that play out, and what are all the different consequences that come with it? But it's a very fluid time in college athletics that's impacting all the different things that we're doing. But at the same time, one of our board members said it really well in evaluating our athletic department. Like we know who we are, we know what we're trying to accomplish, we know what's important, and we got to keep working with that. And the best thing we can do is just continue to support Furman when it comes to enrollment and admissions and getting students here and supporting our sports teams and being season ticket holders and being donors and believing in the investment you make and what the impact is on a school and the size of scale at a Furman.
All right, you want to get to some questions?
Let's do it. Really good questions this time.
Yeah, and let's get the elephant in the room out of the way first.
Yeah.
When the Villanova athletic director's job opened up, I believe I heard a collective "uh-oh" come from the Furman fan base. So, just the direct question: do you have any interest in the Villanova athletics job, athletic director's job?
It's a very fair question, and that's why we kept it in there. And again, I'm always open to answering any questions. The simplest answer is no. That we're here at Furman, and just to explain how we go about this decision. It's a different process for me and my family. When we got down here, we made this decision to leave Villanova. We moved down here. My wife is from the South. We had a desire to raise our children near her family. That was always on our bucket list of things we wanted to try to accomplish. Part of that goes back to me getting out of coaching and getting into administration, is having the ability to make a decision like that. We're at a point where we're very happy at Furman. We love living in Greenville. And then most importantly for us is we've got 3 kids that are in school and doing really well and at an age where moving them is not what we're looking to do. So we're very happy here. We've communicated that. We've been blessed that there's been many different opportunities of interest and offers and different things that have come our way. But we've consistently stayed where we are, and this is unique. And I think one of the challenges and differences is that we go through this with our coaches too. It's what's important to you, what are your values, what do you want to try to accomplish, and for Rachel and I, one of the things that's really important to us is our children and being in a community that we believe in and doing the things we want to do, and that's here. And sometimes there's a sacrifice in it. There may be a sacrifice in money. There may be a sacrifice in prestige. Most people think, hey, you're crazy if you're not going to try to go back to a place that you were at before where you've won national championships. That's maybe not higher on our value system in terms of where things are for us as a family. But no, we're very excited to be here at Furman and excited to work with the people that we do, excited to raise our kids here. And it may sound non-traditional in the athletic director world, but in our family world, it makes total sense.
Somewhere in there, I heard the unspoken that if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy.
So I think you can relate to this. My relationship with Rachel is really unique in the sense that, when we got together, I was in coaching. Like I was in the coaching world, and decisions that we made and moves that we made were based around my career.
Right.
And she had her own career, she had her own ambitions. There was things that she wanted to do, and she willingly sacrificed those things to allow me to be a college basketball coach and to move around and to do the things that led to that. And then with that came the sacrifices that we made. There was a 7-day-a-week, and you can relate to this too because you are working all the time, and therefore you have to learn how to prioritize your family in that space and your faith and your health, all those things. But she made a lot of sacrifices to allow me to be able to do the things I wanted to do at that stage in my life when it came to my career. And really up until the point that we had our 3rd child, I was able to do anything I wanted to do selfishly when it came to my career in the best interest of our family. And then when we had Alistair, we got to the point where we decided to change a little bit and really focus on our family in a different path with administration, and that's what led us to Furman. But no, Rachel's a big driving force in this decision, and in a funny way, people even from Villanova reached out and said, I know you might be interested in the job, but I'd imagine Rachel wants to stay put in South Carolina, and she's been a big part of this. And but at the end of the day, even more than Rachel, it's our children and our belief in Furman and our belief in Greenville and our happiness here that really drives this. And we are happy here, and we really enjoy the people we work with. And there's not a better place I'd want to be. It meets all the things that we want to do.
All right, so we got that out of the way, Furman fans. You wanted it. There you go. Will everything be ready to go in Asheville for the Southern Conference basketball tournament in March? Obviously, talking about the damage from the hurricane. Is everything on track there?
Yeah, really good question. Actually, our commissioner addressed it in the last meeting we had, and yes, the location of the arena, where it's situated on top of that hill, the damage around Asheville was greater than the damage in Asheville in terms of the city. So, yes, they are prepared to move forward, and they're planning to host the tournament in March. There's obviously some cleanup and some work that needs to be done. There's some areas that still need to be improved. but in a really good way. The commissioner, the conference, the schools, all of us are going to be communicating and publicizing not just the importance of attending the tournament, but also the importance of everybody getting up there to support Asheville.
Right.
That's going to be a part of the communication, is that Asheville's at a point where they need help and support. They need to get their businesses, their restaurants, their hotels back. They've lost a significant amount of their financial support that they've had in the past. So the plan is, yes, we will be at the SoCon in March. We're looking forward to it. And we're looking forward to getting the energy back up there that needs to be there. And things may look a little bit differently in certain spaces, but for the most part, things are moving forward in Asheville. The conference had actually planned a volleyball tournament to be there this fall, which would have taken place, I think, at the end of this month. And that will not take place. They're not prepared for that this month, so they moved that to Wofford, able to keep some of the partnerships that they had planned for that. But they will be prepared by March to have us up there.
All right. Next question, any progress on a football locker room upgrade?
This is part of a larger conversation. Not a ton of progress, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but I would just it's important, but right now we have a lot of other priorities that are more pressing. What I mean by that is that one of the biggest drivers right now for what we're doing is the annual fundraising support in support of our teams. It's a little bit unheard of, but 50% of our team's operating budgets are being covered by fundraising. And that's a huge piece for us to push these teams forward, that we need the resources when it comes into just making all the things happen that we have at Furman. Since I've been here, we have not had a substantial budget change in terms of what we do. If anything, we've gone through reductions. People know reductions in programs, reductions in staff, reductions in budget, and we've had some modest increases in salary along the way, but we have not had the ability to change our budget when it comes to operations. So if you look at a 23% margin in inflation, 23% increase in scholarship cost over the same period of time, our greatest challenge is to fund the support for our teams and fund the support for our staff. So if you look at priority number one, it's this. The same exists for football, is that in order to do the things we want to do with football, we got to continue to fundraise and support around the program. The locker room project is certainly important. It's something that we probably need to identify a lead donor for this to get this off the ground. We're working on that, and we're excited about doing that. It's important, but it's going to be secondary to the annual support around that program. One of the things you're going to see as a part of this campaign, the Clearly campaign for Furman, is an emphasis on scholarship endowments. And that for certain donors, they're going to be asked to really support the cost of supporting scholarships at Furman. I would say that's probably the greatest stressor on Furman is the unfunded aid around scholarships and the need for people to do that there. And I kind of use this analogy. I said this before when we were talking about doing Timmons Arena 2 years ago, is that if someone came to us and said, hey, I've got $30 million and I want to give it to you right now, even though we would have wanted to fund certain things like Timmons Arena or fund a locker room project at that time, the reality is if we have these larger gifts, we've got to give it to endowment to reduce the stress that we have around these scholarships we have with our program. My greatest fear for Furman Athletics has always been if we lose scholarships, it directly affects our ability to be competitive. And you talk about wanting to stay at Furman. Like that's the one thing I have said to the administration here. Is like I'm going to be here as long as we can stick to our mission and we can be competitive. If those things can't happen, for me that's a game changer. That's the only thing that I would say that would change for me. Mm-hmm. And I think we all feel that way. Our coaches feel that way, and I know you would feel that way. I mean, people that care about what we do here. But that being said, what I do like, and I know one of the questions about baseball, is that there is a larger conversation about enrollment, about things that support enrollment, about the positives around that. So the baseball conversation has been out there. It kind of stepped up a little bit in the summer. I was excited about where it was going, but it didn't go anywhere at that time. And I'm not saying that baseball is coming back anytime soon, but there's a conversation right now at Furman about all things. They're considering academic programs. They're considering enrollment. They're considering athletics. What's the purpose, and how do we, potentially expand it in different things? So, there's been a voice and a conversation around baseball being a part of that, and it's out there. So I think if we look at this as a whole, we look at what's the best interest of Furman, there's a lot of things that are out on the table right now in a positive way, and I think we'll have some more clarity as we get into the spring. Now, there's also some concern, about this process to figure out what does that mean for the larger Furman in terms of where we're going. Good things that I hear back is athletics is a part of the core mission, and that Division I athletics is very important, and that supporting our athletes and their success is important. But there is a conversation going on right now at Furman about what's the future look like, and baseball's got possibility. So we'll see. It's not there today, but it's the field is there, and the potential for the program exists.
Any contingencies planned if more conference realignment is done? What would Furman's second choice be if the SoCon loses teams? Have you looked that far into the future?
Yeah, we've had some really good conversations, and there's a couple different scenarios that are out there that would impact how things would shape out. One of the things I've tried to say is that we're not at the tip of the spear of this. Like when you look at all the changes in conference realignment that are taking place, they all revolve around right now. First, Power 4 football or this potential football super league, whatever that would be that you see with the Big Ten and the SEC. Secondary to that, you've seen some schools that have chosen as a part of realignment to make the move to be in the group of 5 for football. That's driven some decisions around realignment. There's not as much conversation right now about realignment at the FCS level, and that's not intended to be a bad thing either. I think the stability of the Southern Conference has been a strength of ours, but there's definitely conversations about movement when it comes to regionality, when it comes to conferences, when it comes to the future of where those things are. I would say the majority of those conversations are more geared around adding or adapting to the Southern Conference of what the Southern Conference might look like moving forward, as opposed to leaving the conference.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that there may be 1 or 2 schools that may choose at some point to move on from the Southern Conference, depending on how things go. But I don't think those things are imminent, and I don't think those either are bad either. And what I mean by that is that I think the strength of the conference is its regionality, it's its associations, it's its history, its tradition, that there's a strong group of people that want to be a part of the Southern Conference. I think for some schools, they got to figure out, is this exactly what they want, or do they want something different? And if they want something different, what does that look like? But I do appreciate the fact that our commissioner is going through this process. He's looking at the landscape. He's trying to figure out what this is. At some point, you might see some dominoes that fall, and we've resisted the urge to make moves and go someplace else to date. And I think we've made the right decision, because as we've watched those decisions play out, they haven't been in the best interest of Furman. But we've got our eye to it, and we watch it. But I think it's more likely for the Southern Conference to make some adjustments than it would be for us to move on from the Southern Conference, in the sense that they're looking at the landscape of where things fit right now and how it all fits together would be the best way to say it today.
You mentioned the commissioner. One of the questions was your thoughts on how the new second year, not exactly new, but a new SoCon commissioner is doing.
Yeah, I will tell you, I think that we're very fortunate right now to have Michael Cross leading us with the conference, with all of these things that are taking place with the NCAA when it comes to the House settlement, when it comes to changes and realignment and legislation. Michael is extremely smart. He's at the tip of the iceberg on all these things. His work with the Knight Commission has really helped him in this space. Early on, Michael was trying to feel it out and get a feel for the conference in terms of the things that we're doing and the things that come together. But he has really shown his strength as we've gone through this process with NCAA legislation, working with the CEOs, making the connection with the faculty athletic reps, the senior women's administrators, the ADs. He's doing really, really well. It's an interesting place in the market, because you got to be patient with certain things. Like some things you're in it right away, and other things you got to wait. There's a trickle down effect that comes with it. But I think Michael is with the Southern Conference at the right time as the right leader, because his strength is really knowing NCAA legislation, things that are taking place, patience with teams, working with them. And he's got great members of his staff that like a Jeff Cabe, that really understand what we do and how we do it as a conference and support our coaches the right way. But he's doing a great job.
All right, 3 more, and we'll try to get through these quickly. One was about the success that men's soccer has had in recruiting and what has led to such great progress there.
Yeah, well, 3 things. One, outstanding program, Doug Allison, his leadership, alumni support, constant support for that program. Doug's been doing this for 30 years at Furman, just incredible leader, and he's done a phenomenal job. And he's got so many people tied into his program that support it from an emotional standpoint, from a financial standpoint. But Doug's just been unbelievable. Second piece is just a phenomenal recruiter in Brandon Tucker. Brandon's really stepped into his own. Brandon's made decisions to not pursue head coaching jobs, to stay here at Furman. He has done a great job of when you see great recruiting, there's usually a reason why. And Brandon And Doug would say the same thing to you. Has just done a phenomenal job of building classes, building relationships. Brandon's one of the best assistant coaches in the country, and he's building a great piece with recruiting. And then the third thing is strategic alignment when it comes to the institution. You got to give a credit to our Vice President for Enrollment, Emily Shuck. She's been working with the program and working through policies and aid optimization and really trying to be a great partner with them. That unfortunately did not exist before she was here. You got a great head coach, you got a great recruiter, and you got a great VP for advancement for enrollment that's working with them to help them push this forward and meet mutual goals. So when those three things come together, you see success that we're having that we didn't have before.
And that last piece is especially important when you're a sport that recruits internationally.
Yes. Yeah, internationally, and also how do you identify Furman students who are good students here, and also that financially making it affordable for them to be able to be here, diversification of resources that allows you to go through that process. And not taking anything away from the past, but this particular VP has been more engaged with athletics in terms of saying, how do I work with you? What can we do together? How can we work together in this space? And it's really, you're seeing the benefit right now with men's soccer and in other spaces too, but specifically with men's soccer.
Back to football, American football. Will Furman ever seek FCS games outside the immediate area like other SoCon teams have? Western Carolina went to Montana this year. The Dakotas, West Coast, anything west of the Mississippi.
Yeah, we absolutely could. I go back to the scheduling philosophy that we've had, that we really base it on what's important to the head coach, what's important to him, what is he trying to accomplish with that scheduling. So when we were out at Montana, we had those conversations. There's been conversations about a Big Sky partnership and all those different things. We've had those. I mean, I've talked about home and homes with teams where you're going to fly and do that and come back here. At the end of the day, this is one of those things that goes back to the budget, goes back to resources, and goes back to strategy. For Clay, he feels strongly that playing in this region, the ability to play in this region, recruit to this region, compete in this region, that we have the teams that we wish to compete against, and it's also not cost prohibitive to do those things. So it's interesting. You see some of these matchups that were made a couple years ago, and sometimes the AD wasn't here when they planned it, and they begrudge it because of the expenses that come with it. It's a big commitment to do those things. So one of the things that's taking place in the conversation with the NCAA is more of a regionalization model, which, in spite of what you're seeing in the ACC with like Stanford and Cal, like most people recognize you don't need to travel the country to do all those things to compete, because it is cost prohibitive and it causes an issue in terms of that. So there's an openness on our part, but I also think at the same time it's a realistic nature of what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. I think one of the hardest things with FCS football, it's so hard to compare the Southern Conference against the Big Sky unless you compete head-to-head. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have in national scheduling and national recognition, is that I make the argument last year the Southern Conference might have been as strong or stronger than those conferences. They're really, really good, but we were right there. Maybe this year not, but you don't really know unless you play head-to-head. But you look at East Tennessee State. East Tennessee State almost beat North Dakota State. I mean, they had them right there on the wire, and so we're Western Carolina's had some great games with them. So I think for Furman it has more to do with our strategy around our current coaching staff, and also resources that play into that.
All right, final question. Why, he says, are some longtime season ticket holders, 30, 40, 50 years, given the bottom of the totem pole priority when it comes to seating in the new Timmons Arena? He says, I realize money talks, but it's not fair or right.
Yeah, and it's a great question. As you go through this process, this was actually a conversation we had a lot when I did Villanova's renovation of the Finneran Pavilion about the concept of fair. What's fair to one versus what's fair to another are two different things. So we're not trying to meet the concept of fair. Fair is not going to be the word that we're going to have that's going to meet everyone's standard, because having gone through this before, we'd have the season ticket holder say, well, I went to every game. I went to all the road games. I did all this different things, so therefore I should be leveraged this. You'll have the donor say, you have the season ticket. I've been there for 30 years. But then you'd have the new season ticket holder say, well, but I've been to more of the games in the last 10 years. I've been more passionate, or I've been more involved. Or you'll have the donor say, well, I've given more money, than these things. So the concept of fair for us does not exist when it comes to making fair decisions. What we have to be is we've got to be equitable, we got to be transparent, and we got to communicate and pull everybody into this process. The point system is one of those things that allows for equity. The point system is going to take, season ticket holder with the account. It's going to look at longevity as one of those things. It's going to look at the number of years you've been a season ticket holder. It's going to look at your donations. That The points process is how we'll make decisions within a queue. But at the same time, there's a responsibility to the university to go raise $40 million in donor-funded dollars. That those those donors have got to have the benefit of having built the arena, and therefore they get a higher level of priority when it goes to that process. What I also know with a number of those donors is a number of those donors are not interested in season tickets because they're not in this region. They're going to be here for maybe a couple games a year, but their driving force was more to support Furman necessarily than to do those things. So in the process, there's an opportunity for season ticket holders to move up a rung. You know, one of the things we specifically put in there was a $2,500 gift to the arena, which really is intended to say that everyone has a chance to support the arena at a level that they may believe that they can do. So we want to get to the point of having our season ticket holders say, I can support this. I can opt in to support this at a level that may fit my budget, and at the same time be able to invest in the arena as a part of that process. But the point system is going to create that equity, that transparency in that process. So I get it. You know, I think if we were going through a publicly funded process where there was no resources needed from donors, then you could just go off a point system and make it equitable through a point system. But we've got to have a tiered process in order to raise money, and we need the people that have funded the building to feel like they have a stake in the game so they could be investors as well. So it's managing both sides of the coin. And at the end of the day, we did a webinar to talk about this process. And the one thing that I feel strongly about, if we had a 20,000 capacity season ticket holder base and a 2,500 seat arena, we'd have a problem. In the process that we have now, we're going to figure out how to get all the ticket holders where they want to be and go through that process. What I was trying to describe in that webinar is that this is a renovation, so your seat no longer exists. It's gone. This is going to be a reseating. But at the same time, the building is built to support the base that we have and to put people in a position to get what they want to get out of it. Some are going to want to be closer to the court. Some want to be further back. Some want to be in the middle. Some want to be on the side. Some want to play for premium prices or clubs. Some of them want to have the most basic ticket. We're going to have all those different things as a part of this process. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a tight bowl. Every seat's going to be a better seat. It's going to be a great arena. It's going to be a fun home court advantage. And hopefully it leads to us winning a lot of basketball games, a lot of championships, both with the men and the women. And that's a part of the process.
I was doing talk radio at Clemson years ago when Clemson completely revamped IPTE, its fundraising department, and the fans, many of them screamed loud and long. We got calls all day long. I'm never buying another season ticket. I'm never doing this. I'm never doing that, until it came time to buy tickets. Yeah. And they all seem to come around and finally understand the bigger picture as opposed to how it just affected them individually.
Yeah, and again, it's economies of scale. If we were trying to fit 20,000 people into a 2,500-seat arena, we'd have a problem.
It'd be a good problem to have.
It'd be a good problem to have, but the conversation would revolve around, like, why them on the list ahead of me?
Right.
This process is intended to build the arena, to build it at the right price and size and scale, and at the same time allow our season ticket holders access to get the amenities that they want to have and the seating process we want to have. I would look at this as more of a white glove process where people are going to be worked with and not treated like numbers, treated like people as a part of this process. So I'm confident in the outlay of what we're going to do. I do know where you're going to be sitting. So, I mean, that's one of the priorities is we have courtside seats opposite the bench, and we've got a 4-person table for TV and for Dan Scott. So TV and radio will be center court, down on the court. So we're going to have prioritization for TV and radio. Now
and I don't care where anybody else sits.
I know you don't.
As long as we're there opposite the benches.
I do know where you'll be. And what I don't know is where the visiting radio is going, because I know that we have a plan for it. But, you know, what you do, Dan, is I just want to, again, thank you. Our fan base loves you. I love you. Your energy, your enthusiasm for Furman. I just love what we got going here with you. And I love being able to turn on FM radio and listen. And it's a lot of good stuff. But I know we're going to close this out. I just want to, ask that if you can make it out. We got a women's basketball game on Thursday, their home opener at North Greenville. Please join us for that. Volleyball's got games on Thursday and Friday. I hope you'll join us for that. We really need you Saturday for football. If you can make it out here and support us in beating the Terriers, we would love to have a great crowd for Senior Day. And then as we get into things, soccer is going through their playoff schedule, but men's basketball has got another home game next Monday. And thank you to the fans for coming out. And we're looking forward to a great season ahead, but just really grateful for our Furman family, grateful for your passionate support, and hopefully this was a helpful Ask the AD session to get some questions out there.
I think this ought to tide them over until after the first of the year.
That'd be good. We'll
right.
get together after then.
All right, sounds good. Jason, thank you so much as always. That is Jason Donnelly, the athletic director here at Furman. This has been our Ask the AD edition of Inside Furman Athletics. Back again next week with probably our final one heading into the holidays, and then we'll reboot it all come January. Until then, I'm Dan Scott. As always, God bless you, and so long, everybody.